The spaceport stank of oil, smoke, and fear. Jace stepped off his old freighter and pulled his jacket tight. He came to this moon Grylich for one thing: spare parts. Nothing more. He hated this place, hated the way people stared without. Blinking, but his ship's engine was coughing. And the next planet was too far without a fix as he walked through the narrow market alleys. He saw things he wished he hadn't: cages, long metal cages with creatures inside, some growling, some silent, some looked like animals, others ... looked like people. The signs above the cages were written in 5 different languages. But he didn't need to read them. Trained, obedient, warm-blooded. Disgust twisted in his stomach. He should have turned around, he should have walked away, but something made him stop. It wasn't a sound, it wasn't a cry, it was a feeling. Like someone was watching him. Not begging, not screaming, just ... Watching Jace turn slowly, and that's when he saw her. She was in the smallest cage, sitting on the cold floor, knees pulled to her chest. Her skin was pale violet, like soft bruises. Her hair was tangled and dark. A metal collar sat tight. On her neck, glowing with red lights, she looked up, and their eyes met. Jace froze. Her eyes weren't dull like the others. They weren't broken. They were sharp, clear, full of something dangerous hope. Then she whispered, so soft. It barely touched his ears. "Take me home." Jace's heart stopped for a second. He took a step forward, as if pulled by a string. A large guard noticed and grunted, stepping between Jace and the cage, looking to buy, human. The alien asked, laughing through yellow teeth, "She's a soft one, barely broken in. But smart, too smart maybe." The guard kicked the cage with his boot, and the girl didn't move. Just stared at Jace. "What is she?" Jace asked, voice low. "Not your concern," the guard said. "She's product," the alien grinned. "They call her a pleasure beast, but don't let the name fool you. She talks sometimes." But only when we let her. Jace clenched his fists. He didn't know why. She wasn't human. She wasn't his responsibility. But her voice echoed in his head. "Take me home. Not help me. Not save me." Just those 3 words. "Price?" he asked sharply, surprising even himself. The guard raised a brow. "Expensive." "She's clean, untouched, rare." Jace could hear the pride in the alien's voice. Like he was selling a jewel, not a life. The girl finally moved, crawling to the bars. Her eyes stayed locked on Jace. Not begging, not crying, just waiting. She didn't know him, yet she had trusted him with that one sentence. Jace looked down at his credit chip. He didn't have enough. Not even close. The guard laughed. "Come back when you've got real money." Space Trash then turned his back, thinking the conversation over. But Jace didn't move. He looked again at the cage, the girl, the lights on her collar. He'd seen collars like that before, military grade, controlled by the guard's wristband. Suddenly, Jace's eyes narrowed. His hand reached into his pocket and touched the small blade he always carried. Not much use in a fight, but fast, quiet, sharp. One move, and this could become a rescue, or a suicide. He wasn't sure which yet. "What's your name?" he whispered, risking another glance toward the cage. The girl's lips parted slowly. "Ilari," she said. Then the guard turned back. "I said wait. What did she tell you?" Jace didn't answer. Instead, he stepped forward, fast. One hand grabbed the alien's wrist. The other sliced through the band. The control device fell to the ground, sparking. What the hey? The guard reached for his weapon. Jace kicked him hard in the knee, sending him crashing into a nearby stall. The market exploded in noise. People shouted, ran. Vendors ducked behind tables. Jace dropped to one knee, pulled the cage lock, and jammed the broken wristband into the panel. A spark. A click, the cage door swung open. "Ilari, run." She didn't hesitate. She leaped forward. Grabbing his hand with strength he didn't expect, blasters fired behind them, but they didn't stop. They ran. Through firelight and shadows, through the screams of the market, through the smoke of burning stalls and broken cages. Ilari didn't let go of his hand, and Jace didn't let go of hers. He didn't know where they were going. He didn't know what she really was, but one thing was clear. He wasn't leaving her behind. Not now, not ever. Jace didn't know how they made it out of the market alive. Smoke filled his lungs, heat burned his skin, and angry shouts chased their every step. But somehow, he and Ilari escaped into the lower levels of the city, where the real filth lived. No cameras, no guards. Just shadows and, worse things hiding. In them, Ilari's breathing was sharp and fast. Her bare feet were bleeding, but she didn't complain. She just ran beside him, one hand gripping his tightly, like it was the only thing keeping her alive. They ducked into an old storage unit built into the alley wall. Jace slammed the metal door shut behind them and collapsed against it. Both of them silent for a moment, listening for footsteps. Nothing. Only distant shouting and the hum of neon lights. Ilari sat down slowly, her body shaking. She was thin, bruised, and barefoot, with the metal collar still glowing faint red around her neck. Jace finally looked her straight in the eyes. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded, but her lips trembled. Then she whispered, "They'll come for me." "I know," Jace said, running a hand through his sweat-soaked hair. "That's why we're not staying here long." He pulled out his scanner, checking the chip he'd swiped from the guard's wrist before escaping. "Let's see what this baby can do." Ilari blinked, watching the human work. "You took it?" she asked, voice almost soft with wonder. Jace gave a tired grin. "Of course. How else am I gonna break that collar off your neck?" Her eyes widened slightly, and she touched the collar. "It's more than just a collar," she whispered. "It listens." Jace paused. "Listens to what?" "To my thoughts, sometimes," Ilari said. "When I resisted, it shocked me." Before I could speak, she looked away, ashamed. "It learns what breaks you, slowly, silently." Jace stared at the device, rage rising inside him. "Monsters," he muttered. "They called you an animal, but they're the real beasts." She didn't reply, but her shoulders relaxed slightly, as if his words gave her strength. He opened a small toolkit from his pack and motioned for her to sit closer. She crawled toward him carefully, her movements weak, but her eyes steady. "Hold still," Jace said. "This might sting." He held the device close to the collar and activated a signal disruptor. The lights flickered, then flared red. A sudden pulse of energy surged through Ilari's body. She screamed and dropped to her knees, her hands clutching the collar. "Nitrogen monoxide," Jace shouted, slamming the disruptor off. The collar sparked again, then dimmed, but didn't fall off. "Ilari, you okay?" he asked, grabbing her shoulders. She was breathing hard, her body twitching, but she looked up, eyes wet. "It's not just tech," she said, gasping. "It's biolinked. It's inside me," Jace cursed under his breath. "Then we'll cut it out if we have to." "No," Ilari said, suddenly grabbing his hand. "Not yet. If it goes wrong, it could kill me." Then her grip softened. "But thank you for trying." For a second, they just sat there in silence. Ilari leaned against the wall. Closing her eyes, Jace sat beside her, watching the flickering light reflect off her collar. He had no idea what he'd gotten himself into. But one thing was clear. He couldn't just leave her. "Where are you from?" he asked, breaking the silence. "Ilariane," she said softly, "a world taken by slavers 2 cycles ago. I was heir to the rainbound clans. They thought I died." Jace stared at her, stunned. "Your royalty." I was, she said, her voice flat. Now I'm just. This, she pointed to the bruises, the collar, the scars on her wrists. No, Jace said firmly. You're still Ilari, and I'll get you out of this. I swear it. Suddenly, a sharp buzz rang outside the door. Ilari's eyes flew open. Jace grabbed his blaster, pointing it at the door. A voice came through. Robotic and cold, unauthorized signal detected. Return the asset immediately, or face termination. Ilari's face turned pale. They found us, she whispered Jace. Helped her stand, adrenaline flooding his veins. We move now. Stay behind me, she nodded, but as she followed, she whispered something that stopped him cold. Jace. If they capture me, kill me before they take me back. He turned and grabbed her hand tightly. Not happening. You're going home. With me, and together, they slipped through the back of the storage unit, out into the dark city, where freedom waited and the hunt had just begun. The storm above the city was thick, black, and boiling. But Jace didn't care about the sky. He cared about the girls sitting on the floor of his ship, tired, silent, and broken. Ilari hadn't spoken much since they escaped. She barely moved. As the freighter's engines hummed, her arms were wrapped around her knees, her back pressed to the wall of the medbay. The collar still glowed, red and angry around her throat. Jace knelt beside her with a warm cup of broth. Drink this, he said gently. You haven't eaten since we left. She didn't look up. Her voice came out quiet and hollow. I'm not supposed to eat on my own. Not unless they allow it. Jace's face twisted in anger. You're not theirs anymore, he said. You're free here. She raised her eyes slowly. There was doubt in them, and something else. Something heavy. You don't know what I am, she whispered. I know enough, Jace said. You're not an animal. You're not a slave. You're not a thing. Her fingers tightened around her knees. She took the cup from him and drank carefully, like every sip might be a trick. Then finally, she said, they said I was a weapon. A beautiful one. Her voice shook. I was? Bred in the royal vaults of Ilari, trained to speak 5 languages. Dance, obey, and bleed on command. Jace stayed silent, letting her speak. They called it honor, she said, to serve the Empire. But when the Empire fell, I was sold over and over. My knowledge, my body, even my memories, they wanted it all. Jace sat down beside her slowly. They were wrong, he said, voice firm. You're not a weapon. You're a survivor. She looked at him, truly looked at him, and this time, her gaze held something new. A spark. I've seen humans before, she said after a pause. They always looked away. Pretended not to see me in the cages. I'm not them, Jace said simply. I couldn't look away. They sat in silence for a long moment, the hum of the ship the only sound between them. Then Jace reached into his jacket and pulled out a strange glowing cube. I found this in your cage, he said. It was hidden under a floor panel. Illyria's eyes widened. She grabbed the cube with shaking hands, holding it like it was made of glass. This is mine, she whispered. It holds everything I couldn't say aloud. Maps, codes, names. Jace asked. Leaning in, she nodded. People who helped the slavers. People who destroyed my world. Some of them sit in Galactic councils now. Jace whistled low. No wonder they put a collar on you, he said. You're not just a survivor, you're a threat. She nodded slowly, and they'll kill anyone who protects me. Jace leaned back against the wall, thinking he could run. Leave her at the next safe station. Wipe his hands clean. He should, but he wouldn't. I've flown across the stars, he said softly. Smuggled spice, fought pirates, patched this junk heap of a ship more times than I can count. He looked at her again, but I've never seen anyone fight like you did just to live. Just to speak, he smiled. You're not staying in that corner. Not on my ship. Ilari blinked at him, confused. Then, what should I do? Get up, he said, standing and offering her a hand. You're not some broken creature. You're Ilari of Ilarianae. Start acting like it, she stared at his hand for a long moment, then slowly, very slowly, she reached up and took it. He pulled her to her feet, and for the first time, she stood tall, not like a slave, not like a victim, but like a woman who remembered who she was, first. Jace said, "We take that collar off." "For real this time," she nodded, and then, "Shh," Jace grinned. "Then, we go after the people who put it there." But just then an alarm blared across the ship. Jace raced to the cockpit, Elri close behind him. He checked the screen and saw what he feared. A small ship was trailing them, running silent but fast, no ID. No signal, a hunter, not a patrol. "They found us again," Jace muttered. Elari stepped beside him, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "They will. Keep coming," she said calmly. "Until I stop running." Jace turned to her. "Surprised? You mean fight them?" She nodded. "I have names. I have proof. I can speak." She touched the glowing cube. "But I need someone to help me scream loud enough." Jace smiled, gripping the controls. "Well, sweetheart, you're on a smuggler's ship," he said. "And screaming loudly is kind of what we do." She smiled back, small, uncertain, but real. For the first time in years, Ilari felt something she hadn't dared to feel since her home was taken. Hope. The message arrived silently, without warning. A blinking red icon on Jace's console, hidden deep in the code, encrypted and dangerous. Jace stared at it for a long time, his finger hovering over the open button. Beside him, Ilari stood still, silent, watching his every move. She knew what it meant. They found her. When Jace finally clicked the message open, a hologram flickered to life. A smooth voice echoed through the cockpit. "Cold and calm to all bounty hunters, mercenaries, and enforcement agents. Asset 712B has escaped her legal owners. Known alias Ilari. Reward 2 million credits for her return, dead or alive. Extra bonus if returned unharmed. Human male accomplice is also to be terminated. Their ship has been identified. Destroy on sight." The hologram vanished, leaving behind silence. Ilari closed her eyes, her hands trembling. "They branded me a number again," she whispered. "Not a name. Not a person." Jace gritted his teeth. "This just became war," he said, punching the control panel hard. "They've marked us both." He turned to Ilari, who opened her eyes slowly. "I'm sorry," she said. "You could have walked away. This isn't your fight." "Yes, it is now," Jace said. "They want to turn you into a trophy, and me into dust. I say we hit them first." She gave a small, almost bitter smile. "You speak like a warrior," she said softly. "I'm a mechanic with anger issues," Jace replied. "But for you, I'll become worse." Ilari's voice dropped low. "There's a name in that cube. One man started it all. He sold me first." "A human?" Jace blinked. "A human started this." She nodded. "He worked with the slavers. His name is Vero Nix. A traitor. He lives in New Bastion, hidden by wealth, power, and fear." Jace stood slowly, fists clenched. "I've smuggled cargo through New Bastion. It's a fortress built on greed. Getting to him won't be easy, I know," she said. "But if we reach him, I can expose everything. His secrets, his deals." The network. Jace paced the room for a moment, then snapped his fingers. "I know someone there. Old contact. Bit of a thief. A loudmouth, but he owes me." He slammed the comm panel and dialed an old encrypted frequency. A minute later, a voice buzzed in, rough and amused. "Jace. Haven't heard that name since you almost blew up that spice freighter, Raylan," Jace said. "I need safe passage into New Bastion." No questions. Raylan paused, then laughed. That place is crawling with eyes. What are you smuggling? Now? Gold. Guns. Jace looked at Alari, then back at the screen. Something rarer, he said. The truth, there was a long silence. Then Raylan spoke again. This time, serious? You're in trouble, aren't you? Big trouble, Jace replied. Fine, Raylan sighed. I'll arrange a path, but if I go down for this, you won't, Jace promised. I'll owe you one big favor. Raylan laughed again. You already owe me two. As the call ended, Jace turned back to Alari. We're heading to the heart of their empire, he said. Ready? Alari touched her collar gently. Not yet, she whispered. I don't want to walk into that place in chains. Jace gave her a long look, then walked over and opened a hidden drawer. He pulled out a sharp Tula plasma scalpel. This might hurt, he said. Alari didn't move. I can take pain, she said, but I won't take fear. Jace nodded, leaned in, and carefully placed the blade under the collar. One spark, two pulses, the collar hissed, then cracked, falling to the ground with a sharp clang. She reached up slowly, touching her bare neck. Then she exhaled a breath that seemed like it had been trapped inside her for years. For the first time since they met, she stood truly free. Jace picked up the collar and tossed it into the engine core. The metal melted instantly, destroyed. Now? Alari said, standing tall, let's burn their lies to ash. Hours later, they approached New Bastion, a giant floating city wrapped in golden lights and lies. Security ships scanned every vessel, watching for threats. Jace's ship, patched up and disguised, flew low under the radar. Raylan's backdoor codes worked just barely. They slipped through the layers of patrols and alarms. One wrong move, and they'd be dust in seconds. In the distance, a tall tower rose above the city. Alari pointed. That's where Vero lives, she said, behind walls of steel and slaves. Then we knock on the door. Jace said, grinning loudly. They landed in a hidden hangar beneath the city. Lights flickered, and the air was thick with smoke and rust. But they were in. Elri turned to Jace, her voice firm. They turned me into something to be owned. But I'll make sure they remember my name. Jace loaded his blaster, and I'll be right beside you. They stepped out of the ship and into the underbelly of New Bastion, unseen, unknown, but no longer running. The streets of New Bastion were gold on the outside, but wrought beneath, tall towers reached for the stars, full of rich traders and fake smiles. But below those towers, the city breathed poison. Thieves, broken droids, hungry orphans, forgotten. Under the lights, that's where Jace and Alari walked now. Not on the gold floors, but in the shadows where cameras didn't blink and guards didn't care. Alari wore a long hooded cloak, her eyes alert, scanning everything, no collar around her neck now. No chains on her hands. She was walking free. But the memories still burned in her blood. They had one goal: reach the tower of Vero Nyx. The traitor who sold her people. He lived at the top, guarded by drones, security codes, and paid killers. But Alari had something more powerful than weapons, she remembered. And that made her dangerous. They stopped in an old alley where a group of children huddled around a broken heating unit. One girl, maybe 7, watched them with wide purple eyes. She wasn't scared, just curious. Her skin had the same faint glow as Alari's. Jace leaned down. You hungry, kid? The girl didn't answer, just nodded slowly. Alari stepped forward, pulled out one of the food packs from her bag, and offered it. The girl's fingers were shaking as she took it. You're one of us, the girl whispered to Alari. But not broken. Alari knelt beside her, gently pushing back the girl's dirty hair. They hurt you? She asked softly. The girl didn't speak, just nodded again. Something changed in Alari's eyes. Jace saw it fire behind the sadness, steel. Behind the pain, not just anger, but purpose. They steal the children here, Hilary said quietly to Jace. Sell them to ships. The same way they sold me. Jace looked around, and for the first time, he noticed the signs, too many kids alone, too many missing posters peeling off walls. This wasn't just a crime, it was a business. We take Vero down, Jace said. And maybe this ends, not ends, Hilary whispered. Begins. They left the alley. But not before giving the kids food and the name of a safe contact Raylan had set up. As they walked toward the tower, Hilary kept her hood down. Not hiding anymore, just waiting, just daring them to see her, and someone did. A man in a fine coat and cybernetic eyes walked past, then stopped cold. He turned slowly, eyes locking on Hilary. You're not supposed to be here, he said, voice sharp. You're dead. Hilary smiled. But it didn't reach her eyes. Not dead, she said, just angry. The man reached for his comm unit, but Jace moved fast. One punch. And the man dropped like a stone. Jace pulled him into a side alley, searched his pockets, and found a badge, security level 5, he said, could get us through half the tower. Hilary looked at the man, then at Jace. Do humans always use fists so well? Jace grinned. We don't always use them smart. They reached the entrance to the tower by nightfall. The guards were tall, armed, and lazy, thinking no one would be stupid enough to try anything. They were wrong. Hilary and Jace walked straight up, showing the stolen badge and using the man's ID chip. The doors slid open. Inside was gold everywhere. Walls of gold, floors of crystal, statues of alien slaves holding up lights. It made Hilary sick. Luxury built on bones, she whispered as they walked deeper. A voice called out from behind a desk, halt. Identify your Hilary didn't stop. She walked straight to the guard, pulled back her hood, and said one word. Remember? The guard's face turned white. He did remember she'd been in a cage the last time he saw her. Now she stood tall, with eyes full of thunder. I'm going to the top floor, she said. Either let me pass or scream and bring others. The guard slowly stepped aside. The lift to the top was quiet. Jace glanced at Hilary, who stood still with her eyes closed. You okay? He asked. No, she said. But I'm ready. Jace nodded, hand on his blaster. Then let's end this. When the lift doors opened, they were greeted by a glass hallway and the sound of laughter. Vero Nix sat at the far end, sipping wine and talking to a hologram of some senator. He didn't see them yet. Hilary stepped forward, her cloak falling behind her. No fear, no chains, no Mosconli. Her Vero looked up. Han froze. Hilary? He said, voice cracking. But you were sold, she said. By you. He stood, stammering. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, she said, holding up the glowing cube. This holds every name, every sale, every deal you made. And now the galaxy will know. Vero reached for a weapon, but Jace shot it from his hand before he could aim. Hilary walked up to the man who once sold her like a pet and whispered coldly, I may not be human, but I'm more human than you'll ever be. Asterisk Vero Nix sat frozen on the polished floor, hands shaking, lips dry. He had faced pirates, blackmailers, and even government probes, but nothing like this. Not her, not Hilary, the ghost he had helped. Cage and cell, she stood over him now, calm but deadly, her cloak billowing with each step. No chains, no collar, just her eyes, burning with cold fire. This place, she whispered. Looking around at the marble floor, the glass walls, the tall statues, all of it was built with the screams of my people. Jace stepped beside her, blaster aimed at Vero's head. You're lucky she got here before I did, he growled. I wouldn't have let you speak. Vero tried to crawl back. Voice barely a whimper. Wait, Larry. Listen to me. I didn't have a choice. You always had a choice. She said, you just picked power. Vero pointed at the cube still glowing in her hand. You can't leak that, he said. Desperate now, you don't understand what it'll start. Do Ilari cut him off? That's why I must leak it. They tied Vero up with shock cuffs and dragged him into his private security room. Jace hacked into the building's data core, but the surprise came when Ilari inserted her cube into the tower's console. The system responded with a voice Jace didn't expect. Welcome, Princess Ilariani. Full system access granted. Jace turned, eyes wide. You programmed yourself into their systems? He asked. Ilari nodded. Before I was sold. I broke into their archives using my biosignature. She glanced at the terrified Vero. He never thought I'd come back to use it. She typed a few quick commands. And suddenly, hundreds of holographic screens filled the room. Each screen showed a document, a video, or a signature proof of deals, slave trades, bribes, and secrets. Hidden for years, Jace whistled low. You're about to light the whole galaxy on fire. Ilari stared at the controls. Hand hovering over the final command, broadcast all files. One tap and the truth would spread across all systems. But then the console lit up red incoming message. A live call, untraceable. From somewhere deep in the galactic core, Ilari hesitated. Then tapped it open. A woman's face appeared. Old, stern, eyes glowing with implants. She wore the black and gold uniform of the Galactic Elite Council. Ilaria Velarine, the woman said. Her voice like stone. You have something that does not belong to you. Ilari narrowed her eyes. You mean my life. We allowed you to live because you were silent. The woman continued. But if you send that file, you will start a civil war. Systems will fall. Billions will suffer. Do you want that blood on your hands? Ilari stood still, her hand frozen above the command. Jace looked at her, silent. Letting her choose, he knew this wasn't his decision. This was hers. I was a child, Ilari said quietly. Her voice shaking, I watched soldiers kill my mother while nobles laughed. I was dragged away, trained to smile, punished for crying. And sold for being too pretty. Now you tell me to stay quiet again. She looked straight at the screen, voice rising. I won't. The woman didn't blink. Then you're no longer protected, she said, and neither is that human beside you. The call ended. Alarms started screaming through the tower. Red lights flared, and the floor shook. The council's enforcers were already on the way. Jace grabbed his blaster and turned to Ilari. Whatever you decide, he said, I'll back you. Ilari looked down at the console, her hands trembling. Then she pressed broadcast. The screens lit up, sending encrypted data across systems. Satellites, black markets, and public terminals, billions would see it. Her face, her story, the truth far above them. A fleet dropped out of hyperspace, black ships shaped like blades. Covering the sky over New Bastion, the council had arrived, inside the tower. Panic erupted, guards fled, sirens wailed, but Ilari and Jace stood their ground. We need to get out, Jace said, pulling up an escape route. They'll nuke the building once they realize the data's out. Ilari turned to Vero, still cuffed and shaking. You die here, she said calmly, just like the others you buried. He tried to beg, she walked away without another word. They fought through smoke and gunfire, down spiral lifts and narrow vents. Jace covered her with fire, while Ilari led the path. She knew the building's secret paths. She once cleaned them in chains. Now she walked them in fire. As they reached the lower levels, explosions rocked the tower above them. The sky turned black as the council fleet fired down on their own city, trying to bury the truth, but it was too late. The files were free. In systems across the stars, news feeds lit up with Ilari's name, her face, her voice. And the people listened. They escaped in a stolen ship from Vero's hangar, burned, wounded. Breathless but alive, as the stars opened up before them, Ilari stood at the window, eyes wet but strong. "You didn't have to come with me," she whispered to Jace. "I did," he said. "Because someone like you doesn't just survive. You lead." The stars stretched wide and silent as the stolen ship drifted beyond the wreckage of New Bastion. Flames still burned behind them. The city was in chaos. The Council's ships were pulling out too late to stop the truth. Ilari had already won, but victory didn't feel like she imagined. She stood by the viewport, arms crossed, eyes distant. Her reflection stared back, tired, bruised, free. But freedom came with questions she wasn't ready for. Jace stepped into the cockpit, wiping blood from a cut above his eye. "We made it," he said softly. "Whole galaxy knows your name now." Ilari nodded. "Yes. But they don't know me." He walked beside her, leaned against the cold metal wall. "They will," he said. "What you did, just the start." She didn't smile. "Not yet." "The start of what?" she asked. "I have no planet. No family, no throne. Only stories and pain." "You have something more," Jay said. "You have choice." The message came through an hour later. A blinking light, a soft tone, but the weight of it was heavy. Ilari opened the transmission. With shaky fingers, it was a woman's face, older, gray skin, tattoos of the Ilarian Eye royal house, princess. The woman whispered, tears falling from her eyes, "We thought you were dead." But the signalier voice had reached us. Ilari's breath caught. "You're alive." She asked, "How many?" "Not many," the woman replied, "but enough to build again. We are scattered, hiding." Waiting for something to believe in, she leaned closer to the screen. "And now?" "We believe again." Ilari looked at Jace, then back to the woman. I'm not ready," she said. "I'm not the leader you need." "You're not the girl they broke," the woman said. "That is enough." The message ended with Kordnitsa, planet on the edge of forgotten space, a place where the last of her people waited for her return home. Jace leaned on the console, arms folded. "You going?" he asked gently. Ilari was silent for a long time. Then she spoke. "They need a voice." "I've always wanted to be more than just a victim." He nodded slowly. "Then go. I'll fly you myself." She turned, eyes locked on his. "And you?" she asked. "What do you want?" Jace scratched the back of his neck, then chuckled. "I didn't think that far ahead." He looked at her again, more serious. "But I've never flown with someone like you before." Ilari stepped closer. "You don't belong in the shadows, Jace. You're more than a smuggler now." "And you're more than a princess," he replied. They stood in silence. Two broken lives built by war and slavery, and lies now finally free to choose something different. "I don't know how to lead," she said softly. "I don't know how to follow," he answered. They both laughed, and for the first time, the laughter felt real. The ship landed on a quiet world 2 days later. The skies were blue, the wind soft, and the trees danced in gold light. Children ran to greet them, their faces bright, their eyes wide. A few of them looked just like Ilara, same glow, same markings, same fire behind their gaze. The people gathered around her, whispering her name, not as a curse, but as hope. An elder stepped forward, tears running freely. He bowed deeply and said, "Welcome home, princess." But Ilari didn't reply, not right away. She turned to Jace, her voice low and clear. "Come with me," she said, "not as a guard, not as a savior, but as my home, if you'll be that." Jace blinked, surprised. "You sure?" Ilari stepped closer, took his hand, and whispered, "You were the first person who didn't look away. You saw me not a number, not a pet, not a danger." She squeezed His hand, and when I asked you with nothing but a whisper, "Take me home." You did, Jace. Looked down at her, eyes soft, heart full. "No princess has ever asked me that before," he said with a small smile. "Guess I'll stay." And he did. Years later, across the galaxy, people still whispered her story. The girl in chains, the man with a broken ship, the truth that started a war and healed a world. But on that quiet planet, far from the noise, Ilari no longer had to whisper. She had a voice now. She had her people, she had home, and the man who once saved her with a look stood beside her every day. Together, they built something stronger than any empire, a life.